just want to introduce myself. My name is Bernadette Kirkus. I have been teaching the cyber theft and wire fraud for Orange County Realtors for a little bit over a year now. I do work with an escrow company, Escrow Options Group, and we are trained by the FBI on cyber fraud and wire theft annually. So this is not going to be a recorded presentation because of the fact that this is consistently changing. So we want to make sure that you have all the updated information as things change and evolve via cyber threats, wire fraud, and how it's affecting our industry. I have 21 years of experience in the real estate escrow industry, and I'm also a self-made nerd, meaning I know how to code and build computers and do all that kind of fun stuff. So this is really my realm of comfort, and I hope that I'm able to scare you, but also give you a little bit of knowledge and information, educate you on what to look for and how to protect your systems. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So why education on cybersecurity is really important. National Association of Realtors did a big, thorough study on this, and about almost 12,000 people were victims of wire fraud in real estate in 2019. So that ended up making it a loss of $221 million. This is nationwide. This is not just Orange County statistics. It ranked real estate and rental wire fraud number 5 out of more than 30 types of fraud attacks by the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. So we are a huge, huge target. This is why it's so important for all of us as an industry as a whole, from the title companies, mortgage lenders, attorneys, real estate attorneys, your realtors, everybody having to do with our industry. It's really, really important to keep yourself educated on what's going on so that we can try and close that bubble and not be one of the top 5 industries that's being heavily attacked. So reasons why this is happening is we're more connected now. There's 50 to 75 billion devices connected to the internet. That means tablets, phones, computers, everything is on the internet now. Everything is in the cloud. The more networking we do online, the more we become vulnerable if we're not watching out for what we need to do. So, and this is not to say, we're not going to ever do this, but this is really where everything is going. Everything is becoming technology-based. Everything is becoming social media heavy. Websites, everything's online now. So knowing more about this and really educating yourselves is going to help you navigate in the future. I have several agents that tell me all the time, well, I'm just not going to do social media and I'm going to take everything online. Well, by doing that as a realtor, you are really going to miss out on a lot of networking and a lot of business, because this is just where everything is going now. So better to educate yourselves and stay safe and move forward with technology than it is to close doors on technology. Software is more complicated nowadays. It's not just, throw in a disk into your computer and download something that takes about 2 minutes. Everything now is heavily coded. It's heavily, there's tons of algorithms out there. Lots and lots of information on the back ends of all types of software that goes into our systems. Even just this Zoom by itself right now is pulling some algorithms on the back end to make this software work. So with that being said, it becomes more vulnerable because there's just more information out there. Attacks are increasing despite better awareness, because everybody's moving so fast that we're sometimes forgetting to do certain things and take certain steps. We see this happen a lot with our industry, where I'll have clients that were on the buyer side and they didn't get to choose the escrow company, and the escrow company was a smaller shop, didn't know what to look for, didn't really know steps to take for wire fraud and protecting the clients, sent out wire information without it being encrypted. The internet or the email was intercepted, and the money was gone. It vanished. Basically, an attacker grabbed that information, pretended to be the closing company, sent different wire instructions to the buyer. The buyer then deposited their funds, their closing down payment, to this account that was not the escrow company, and that money is now gone. So we'll get into what that actually does to the realtor in the event that happens to you a little bit later in this slide. But just to keep everybody aware, making sure who you're working with is really important. The title company, the lender, everybody. So if you're on the listing side, you have a lot more control. Make sure you're asking questions. Have you ever been breached data-wise, have you ever had wire fraud? As a realtor, your one main objective is to do everything you can for your client. And one of those things is to ask these questions for all the affiliates that are involved in the transaction. Once you do open escrow, just keep in mind that your escrow company or title company have extremely sensitive information pertaining to your client. They have social security numbers, they have bank account numbers, so does your lender. This is all very, very important information, and these are all triggers that these potential attackers look for. So if things are not being sent securely, if things are not being sent carefully, they're targets. So it's really, really important for you as the realtor to make sure you're asking these questions to the affiliates involved in a transaction, even if you're on the buy side and you're not able to choose as many of these companies as you'd like to. You should still be asking these questions to make sure that you're covering all bases for your client. Common cyber attacks. So the biggest cyber attack that happens is obviously business email compromise. So if you have, let's say you're with Keller Williams and your email address is @kellerwilliams.com, business emails are the number one targeted email accounts because they know that if they infiltrate one, they can infiltrate all. So this happens quite frequently, and it has definitely put many, many businesses out of business because of it. In 2019, 1.8 billion losses were reported just in the United States from email hacks. That means that they can infiltrate the actual company via an employee's email and obtain all sorts of information, be able to send false wire information, obtain funds that way, change bank accounts, all sorts of stuff that comes up just from infiltrating a business email address. So to close that gap a little bit more and put it into real estate perspective, if you're a realtor and you've got tons of contracts and past client information saved in your inbox, and somebody was to go into that inbox of yours, they now have contact information for your clients. And not only that, they now see email addresses of escrow companies, lenders, anybody that was a part of a transaction for any of your past transactions, they now have access to, which means they can now pretend to be one of these companies, send out an email to a past client, tell them that an invoice hasn't been paid or that they need information to send refunds, things like that of that nature. And now they are either stealing from your clients, stealing from you, or getting into your client's account by first hacking your email account. So, that's a really, really scary thing. Over 23,000 victims in 2019, and it was the most costly attack method, again, because these are businesses, so when they infiltrate one, they're able to infiltrate all. Data theft and exfiltration. So we'll get into exfiltration a little bit later, but just to go into the data theft part, this is when people steal personal information. So what we like to call NPI. This is birth dates, driver's license, social security numbers, bank accounts, bank information, mortgage loan information. What they do is they steal that information, they sell it on the darknet, and it's stolen for competitive advantage on the darknet, which means these thieves on the darknet are competing against each other. So the more information that they have, the more money they end up making. So not only do we want to make sure we're covering wire fraud and money and deposits, but we also want to make sure that we're covering personal information as well. The last thing you want is for your client to have identity theft happen, or for you personally as a realtor, you're probably using your email address for personal things as well. So we want to make sure that you are also covered in the best way possible, and you're not having to deal with any kind of personal information, identity theft, or anything like that as well. Extortion and other attacks and targets. These include threaten to release stolen data. So if you're a top producing agent or you're very well known on the internet, things like that, they will use that against you in things like ransomware, which we'll get into a little bit later. They'll use that information against you in order for you to pay them a sum lump of money. Crypto miners. So this is a really big thing lately, and it's because of cryptocurrency. So I'm sure a lot of you remember Bitcoin. Bitcoin has kind of quieted down a little bit, but there's all sorts of cryptocurrency information coming out there right now. Most of them are fraudulent. You'll get lots of Facebook messages, email messages, things on Twitter, things on Instagram from people that are pretending to be investor companies for these cryptocurrency companies, telling you to invest in them. They'll turn you into millionaires, all this good stuff. And basically what they're doing as they're talking to you is they're stealing your information. And by doing so, they're able to infiltrate all of your information and eventually cause everything on your back end to kind of crumble. So when you hear cryptocurrency, please be wary of that. It's definitely not something that the FDIC is okay with at the moment. I know there's talk about how that's going to affect real estate. We're kind of unsure about that, but for now, it's definitely not an acceptable form of funds. And it's also just leading to a lot of different types of fraud on the back end, just because people know that this might be the next step to how people purchase property. Bank Trojans basically, Simon, it goes hand in hand with the cryptocurrency. These are the ones that are going into different types of social media platforms, pretending to be investors and luring people in that way. SQL injections. This is if you have any type of software. All software runs something called a SQL on the back end. Basically what they do is if they can hack your system and they can figure out what the SQL is on the back end of your system, they've basically taken over your entire system, which means that they can take over any software that's in your system and they can crash your system. But the winning point for them is they are now able to get any personal information off your system just by looking at all the different types of SQLs that are stored on the back end of your system. A really good example is if you don't have something that's called a two-step authentication process. So if you're not covering all of the online items that you're doing, for example, Facebook, and you don't have a two-step authentication process, then what ends up happening is they can easily hack the back end of your Facebook page and they can get all sorts of information on you. And then move forward from that. And a lot of times what I'm seeing is that agents are using personal information as passwords. And so if they can get it off of Facebook, it's more than likely going to be across the board, which means it might be on any and all shopping sites that you are utilizing, banks, online banking that you're utilizing, and now they have access to everything. We'll get into password stuff a little bit later, but that's kind of what the SQL injections are. Okay, ransomware. So this is what I brought up very briefly in the past slide. So in 2018, ransomware declined a little bit. It was about a 30% decline from 2017, and attacks were more costly than the years previous to that. However, in 2019, ransomware attacks doubled, and then in 2020, attacks increased by almost 3 times that amount. This is obviously because everybody was at home. Everybody was on Zoom or on GoToMeetings. Everyone was online. So if you have a majority of people working online, but they're not covering their bases and they don't have a strong enough system to protect themselves, they're not using two-step authentication, they don't have proper passwords in place, this was like a gold mine for ransomware and for hackers. So that's why that increased substantially in the year 2020. Companies and individuals that were affected by this, that are infected, had to do with email attachments. So we were seeing a lot of, especially around the beginning of COVID, when everybody thought that real estate was going to stop completely. Basically, what started happening is agents were getting false emails saying that they have a client that now has a want for their current listings. Here is a contract that's, please take a look at my offer. And an agent would double click on that attachment, and now there's ransomware on their system. Malicious websites is another thing. So if you are unsure about a website or a website is an unsecure website, that's definitely a big trigger factor. Make sure that you're just not going on random websites. Spear phishing is very similar to phishing emails, which I know a lot of people are familiar with at this point. But if you're not familiar with a phishing email, it would basically look like a person's email that you know. And unless you hover on the actual email address itself, you would not know that it's a fake email. And I'll kind of show you a little bit of an example of that a little later, just so you can kind of keep your eyes open when you're getting these emails. Vulnerable exploitation would be what I had previously talked about. So if you have a pretty strong online presence, you're going to be targeted a lot more heavily. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is even if you don't, you're a real estate agent, which means your business cards are out there, your website information is out there, your information is out there, and it has to be because that's your livelihood. So if you're not protecting that information, you're vulnerable to these attacks. All right, data exfiltration. So data exfiltration is anything that you have gone on online where you've entered your credit card to purchase anything. If you're entering it into a website that is, one, not secure, two, is like a random purchase, three, you're saving your payment information, things like that. These are all things you should not be doing. If you're going to purchase something online, please do not save your payment information. Never use your debit card because that's attached to your actual bank account. So if you're going to do something, use your credit card because then you can just shut it down if anything happens. But that's basically what data exfiltration is they look for payment information on websites. Know your vulnerabilities. Again, don't use a debit card to make any types of payments online. Don't make payments online for things that you're unaware of that don't belong to you. Don't purchase anything off of an unknown, unsecure website. Phishing and spear phishing, again, if you get an email from somebody that is, it seems a little bit off asking for money, hover over their email address. If you don't get a small pop-up that shows exactly their email address and it shows something crazy like 20,000 different characters, that's how you know it's a phishing email. Don't respond. Don't do anything, just delete it. Old, still active credentials. This is something that I'm realizing a lot with clients currently right now is that they have websites that they haven't been on in years. They don't remember what their credentials are, but those are still open sources for these hackers to try and get. So if you still have any of these websites that you were on a couple years ago, but you don't use them, MySpace is a really good example. Make sure that you're going back on and you're either deleting the profiles or you're updating passwords on there and making sure that the passwords are not anything personal. So no children's name, no pet's name, don't use your street addresses, don't use your last name, don't do anything like that. Make sure it's just kind of something that really doesn't make sense, that it's a mixture of capitals, lowercase, symbols, numbers, and the longer the better. And make sure you're doing that with current emails as well. Weak authentication, that would be weak passwords. And making sure you have a two-step authentication, especially on online banking, is extremely wise. So please look into that. It should be in the privacy setting of any website that you have. There will be an option for two-step authentication. Viruses, malware attacks, just making sure that you understand how these criminals are coming after you for malware and viruses, and it's basically either going to be through a pop-up, it's going to be through an email attachment, it's going to be through an unsecure website. So stay away from those three. And then social engineering would be all your social media platforms. So if you are on social media, I urge you to have a two-step authentication process on each one of those as well, tying them into your cell phone where you have to, they text you a code and then you put in that code every time you sign in. Is very wise. It only takes a couple of seconds and it could save you from a lot of damage. All right, real estate agents, you are heavily targeted, and why? So there were over 12,000 data breaches recorded between January 2005 and October of 2020. And that doesn't seem a lot until I tell you that this was in Orange County. So this is not real estate nationwide. These are Orange County numbers. It takes company an average of 6 months to detect a data breach. So if it's going to take a company that usually has a large IT behind them 6 months to see a data breach, then how long do you think it's going to take you on a personal level? Just making sure that you're looking at everything and changing up your passwords pretty frequently is going to help you from any type of data breach. Your E&O doesn't cover cyber theft or wire fraud. This is a huge misconception in our industry. A lot of agents feel that if they're underneath any kind of brokerage or even just their own personal E&O, that, let's say, worst case scenario, wire fraud does happen on a transaction or information fraud happens on a transaction during escrow, that their E&O is going to cover that. That is absolutely false. There is no E&O out there that is going to cover any kind of fraud that happens on a transaction. So I want to make that extremely clear because this has been a huge misconception, especially over the past couple of years. So what ends up happening if your seller's net proceeds just happen to vanish because the escrow or the title company didn't do their due diligence to make sure that those funds were going to be protected in the transaction, you as the realtor can be personally held responsible for damages caused by cyber theft or wire fraud. This means that that seller can come after both side agents as well as the buyer, as well as anyone involved in a transaction, and place a lien against you until they recoup their funds. For some agents, this can cause a bankruptcy. This can tarnish your reputation and can ultimately ruin your business. So that's why it's really, really, really important to make sure that all the people within a transaction that you're working on know what they're doing, have everything covered, know how to practice safe wiring of funds. They have good cybersecurity. They have good things in place. And I'll go over some of those items a little bit later on what you should look for and the questions you should be asking whenever you're in an escrow transaction or a closing transaction with a title company. Okay, what can real estate agents do? And this goes for not only your real estate business, but just personal as well. You really need to take password security seriously. I put this as my number one because I have run into several real estate agents where their passwords is their realtor brand. So for example, Kelly sells OC. Your password is Kelly sells OC1. That's not a good password. You have a pet named Spike. You put Spike123 as your password. Not a good password. Using your kids' names. Not a good password. Your street address, where you might have grown up. All of these things, anything that actually means something should not be a part of your password. Your password should be something super crazy, like at, exclamation mark, capital D, lowercase r, lowercase t, y, capital U, 431, question mark, asterisk, H, two capital B's. Something makes absolutely no sense, a combination of characters, and at least 9 characters long, at least. Transmit sensitive information by other means than an email. This is where I'm going to start bringing up closing services, title, and escrow. So if you have any kind of personal information, you should definitely not email it unless it's an encrypted email. Most, if not all, real estate professionals do not have the means of encryption emails. So if your escrow company is going to send wire instructions that have the account number and the ABA number whited out, because that's their way of being safe, and they email you these wire instructions for closing funds, and you now forward them to your client so that your client can wire their funds, here's why these 2 steps were wrong. 1, there's going to be an algorithm from the attacker on the back end that reads anything having to do with wire, funds, closing, transaction. And as soon as they see wire instructions, even though those 2 items are not there, the ABA and the account number, that escrow company is now going to be hacked. Now that email went to you, which means that hacker that hacked that escrow company now has your information and can now hack you. They can then hack your client. So what's ultimately going to happen is your client is going to receive an email that looks like it's coming from the escrow company with different wire instructions to an account for that hacker. Your client is going to think it's a legitimate email, or you might forward it to your client, and that money is going to be deposited in that hacker's account. This is why it's really important that an escrow or a title company that you are working with is using an encrypted email. Sending account information via text message is also just as bad. If you are using your phone can easily be hacked. It can easily get hacked, like an email or like anything on your systems. Sending it by text is not a secure form. The only secure form of sending any kind of wire information is encryption. That is the only secure form. Now, I do get a lot of realtors that tell me, well, I'm just going to have my clients bring in a check or bring in a cashier's check, just like the good old days. Unfortunately, 99% of closing companies do not accept that anymore for 2 main reasons. 1, a cashier's check can be canceled up to 90 days. So there were a numerous amount of escrow companies that unfortunately had, smaller ones, that unfortunately had to go out of business because they had buyers come after the fact and cancel those checks. And that money's just gone. So the best form and method of closing an escrow transaction quickly is via wire. Those are considered immediate funds. You never have to wait a holding period, all that stuff. So there is bonuses to wiring funds, but they just have to be done securely. One of the things we practice is we send our wire instructions via encrypted email. And when we receive wire instructions from the seller, and we do request a hard copy, and we do request that it be notarized. When we receive that from our seller, before we wire funds to our sellers, we call them. We call the phone number that was originally given to us by the seller, and we verify the wire information on the phone with them before we release funds. So we've been in business since 2005. We've never, ever had data breach or wire fraud happen, and that's just because we take it extremely seriously. And there are other escrow companies that take it extremely seriously as well. In addition to that, we're one of a couple that have a cyber insurance policy. So if anything were to happen, we would be covered. We would assist you in that matter. All title companies by law now have to have an SSAE certification. That stands for System Security Attestation Engagement Certified. It's SOC 1, SOC 2. I'm sure a bunch of you have heard about this already, but it is the highest level audit. It's done annually, and it covers the entire financials and the tech side of the company to make sure they're 100% secure. They have the best, most up-to-date cyber information, that they have a business continuity plan. They have an information security policy that they're practicing annually. They're training every single one of their employees. They're doing background checks on their employees. It's a very hardcore audit, but it also helps give you that peace of mind, and it helps everybody working with that company give them peace of mind as well. Again, all title companies have to have it. There are lots of escrow companies that have this as well, but questions you should ask if you're getting into an escrow and you're representing a seller is, what do you guys do to protect your company from wire fraud and cyber theft? And see what they're telling you. Same thing when you're working with a buyer. Ask that escrow company, how are you sending out wire instructions? If they tell you they're texting it or they're sending it wired out, be wary. Worst case scenario, and you've got your hands tied, and that's just what that escrow company does, go pick it up from them, physically pick it up for them, or have them FedEx it. I would rather pay $15 to get a FedEx of a document than sit in court and be sued for $200,000. Just giving you kind of an idea there. Okay, so don't get involved in wiring of funds. You shouldn't get involved anyways. You should have it be from the escrow company to your client, from the client to the escrow company. You got a buyer, you tell that escrow company to contact the buyer direct to obtain the buyer's deposit. You're working with a seller, you have the escrow company contact the seller direct to coordinate wiring the funds. As soon as you insert yourself in this step, you are now liable if anything happens. So completely take yourself out of that equation. The other thing you can do is, if you're representing a buyer and the listing agent's escrow of choice doesn't really have it together and you feel a little bit weary about it, put it in your contract, put it in your counteroffer. Listing agent chose an escrow company, or you want an escrow company that has a SSAE certification, wire fraud, cyber theft insurance. And if they come back and say, no, we're using my escrow company, at least you had something in writing. So if you do go to court and something happens and your buyer's funds disappear, you can say, I was trying to utilize an escrow company that was more secure. Here's the proof of that. And the listing agent still chose to work with this company. So just keep yourself protected. Trust your gut. If an email looks suspicious, or if you're not sure about a link, don't open it. I can't stress this enough, because this is where fraud always happens in our industry, is from somebody clicking a link or opening an attachment in an email that they really should not have. So for example, and especially now because the market is a little insane, you're going to get about 1,000 offers. If you get an offer from an agent and the email kind of looks weird, and you hover over their email address and it looks very strange, there's a lot of characters, Google that agent and call them. Don't call the number that's on the email. Call what's on what you find on the website. And then you can ask the agent, hey, did you send me this email? I just got an offer for, this property. Was this you? And if they say, yeah, it's me, then great. You got an offer to look at. You got an offer to show your client. If they say, no, that wasn't me, then I would let them know, you think you probably got hacked. I just received an email with your information in it. So just to be safe, it's always better for you to be on the safe side than it is to just assume and start clicking. Again, same thing with links. Lots of agents that get all sorts of marketing promotions. Be very, very careful of that. I've had several agents click on links that ended up being malware because it was a promotion for, having their first packet of marketing stuff be free. And after that, it was only going to be $20 a month. And it had to do with, brochures, direct mailers, door hangers, notepads, all sorts of stuff. And the agent's like, wow, that's a really great thing. And they click on the link and now a hacker has access into their entire system. So just be very, very leery and careful of the things that you're looking at. Ensure your team, your escrow, your title, your lenders are well protected to the fullest extent. So I've already gone over this a little bit, but I can't stress enough, make sure you're asking questions. Whether you are representing a seller, representing a buyer, dealing with a lease, whatever the case may be, anyone and everyone touching that transaction, make sure that they are secure and they're using the proper steps to make sure that your clients and you are protected, especially escrow. Escrow holds all the money. So the person that's going to be targeted the most once a transaction is open and going is the escrow company. They hold everything, all the money and all the personal information. So make sure you're asking those questions. Make sure that they have some really good protocols in place. Always log out of your email account. If I had to guess, every single person that's on this class right now is always logged into their email accounts. Here's why you should always log out of them. And I can't do this by show of hands, but I usually ask this question in person, is how many of you have checked your emails in a coffee shop or in your car at a gas station, walking around Target, anything like that? And usually the entire class raises their hand. And that's typical for our industry, right? We're always on the run. We're always out there doing stuff. Well, every single time you're logging onto the internet, if you're not using your data and you're using Wi-Fi, you're on an open Wi-Fi. If you're on an open Wi-Fi, it's not a secure Wi-Fi, which means your cell is now hackable. They can hack your information. So if you're doing your online banking while you're grocery shopping, or while you're sitting at a Starbucks, or if you're sitting in a hotel lobby room, you're sitting on an open Wi-Fi that is not a secure Wi-Fi, they can hack all that information. Be very careful what you do on your iPads, your tablets, your cell phones, when you're not in your home and on a secure network. So I'm going to go into the second part of this, but first I'd like to open this up for any questions. So if you can't see this, just let me know. You should be able to see each one of these slides. All right, so the FBI's priorities and cyber mission. The FBI's priority is obviously to protect the United States, and their cyber division is to protect against the cyber-based attacks and high technology crimes. They're all over the place. The nice thing about what we do is that we train with them every single year, and we have a direct contact with them. So if anything does happen, we can report it right away. But even with that said, it still takes the FBI some time to be able to find out who the hacker is. And by the time that's even found, that money's already gone and overseas. It's so much harder for those funds to be recouped once they've gone overseas, because now they're under different banking jurisdictions. So just keep that in mind. And it looks like I'm getting a couple of questions in here really quick. So I'm going to try to address those before we, no, put that away. Okay. Again, it says, tell me again regarding what I should ask escrow and title in regards to protection. So just ask them first, what kind of form of, how are they practicing safe wire funds? Like, how are they sending out wire instructions? Is it encrypted? Are they sending them out via text message? Are they sending them out via normal email? You want to know how they're sending out wire instructions. 2, always instruct them to communicate with your client direct in regards to wiring of any funds. And 3, check with the escrow company if they have a cyber fraud or cyber wire insurance policy. See what they have. Do they have an SSA certification? Do they have the insurance policy? What do they have to in the event wire fraud occurs on your transaction? Email's okay and safer for sending through our office Barracuda system. If it's an encryption email, yes, it's safe. But again, I really urge you as a professional real estate agent to completely take yourself away from anything having to do with wiring of funds. Because again, if something were to happen, you're going to be part of that who's held liable for it. So just completely take yourself out of that and let it be between the client and escrow. It's the safest way to do it. All right. Let's go ahead and get back to this. So each of the FBI's 56 field offices has special agents, intelligence analysis. So I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of this, but I just want to let you know that in every single state, there is an actual FBI wire fraud department, and that's literally all they do all day, every day. So the fact that this is happening in every single one of our states makes it known that it's on the rise. And again, like I said, once that money leaves FDIC insured banks and so overseas, the likeliness of you getting those funds back to your clients goes down to less than 10%. So the quicker we can try and catch any type of wire fraud before the actual funds are gone, or any type of hack attempt, the better it is for you and your client. As soon as that money leaves, the chances of them getting it back is slim to none. And then at that point, you have a very angry buyer, a very angry seller that's going to sue everyone. Some of this is going to be some of the stuff that I've already covered, but we'll cover it into more details, and then we'll start asking a bit more questions and going into how you guys are personally protecting yourselves as well. All right, cyber investigations conduct criminal and national security investigations. So they start with an allegation. It's basically a violation, right? So once somebody reports it, and you can report it directly on their website, they have a phone number as well. Usually if fraud happens on your escrow transactions, the escrow company is responsible for reporting the fraud. Your client can do it as well. They can go directly to the FBI's cyber investigation division on the site. Super easy to find, and they can put in the information. But usually the person that should be responsible for opening up a case is the escrow company if the wire fraud happened within their company. They'll then collect as much evidence as they possibly can, which means they're going to want to see all email trail back and forth having to do with funds. They're going to want to see the wire information. They're going to want to see the transmittal of the banks where that money went, any information like that at all. And then again, now if it goes into something where a lawsuit happens like that, then it's going to go into a jury trial. So yeah, just to keep you guys a little bit even more scared is, anytime an investigation does happen, you're probably going to get a phone call from the FBI, and you're probably going to have some questions that you're going to need to answer. So even more reason why just keep yourself completely out of the situation of wiring any kind of funds. If this happens to you on a personal level, say your system was hacked, your personal information was stolen, now you're seeing, loans and credit cards being opened with your name, things like that. You'll have to go through these steps as well directly with the FBI to try and get all of that closed. Your very first thing should be contacting your bank, credit cards, and just trying to close as much information as you possibly can. And then going into the FBI and trying to open up a case so that they can try and find whoever has hacked your information and get a stop to that. Because once they've hacked you, they don't just hack you one time. They'll try and get as much as they possibly can out of you. Okay, business email compromise. We did cover this, and we covered the exfiltration, extortion, and then other types of hacks. Again, if you're working in your office and your email addresses are linked to your actual brokerage, your brokerage is just make sure that they have a lot of information covered, a lot of good security information, up to date. Can't think of the word, antiviruses on their systems, secure office networks. There are a lot of boutique real estate companies that don't have secure Wi-Fi in their offices. I'm not quite sure why, but you should check and make sure that they have a secure Wi-Fi if you're going to jump on that Wi-Fi when you're in the office. Using things like the Barracuda system, like the question just asked by Cindy, that's great. Barracuda is great. But just making sure that if you're sending out personal information, sending out correctly. Keeping information in your inbox for a long period of time is not a good idea. I would suggest investing in an external hard drive. They're super cheap. You can get them for $60. I would throw everything in your emails on that, and then just wipe your email clean like once a month, twice a month, every other month, but somewhat frequently. because anything that sits in your actual inbox instead of subfolders is the quickest thing to see. So if you have any kind of, receipts, confirmations from a purchase that you've made, bank statements, anything like that sitting in your inbox, those are very vulnerable and sensitive pieces of information. And if somebody hacks your system, that's the first thing they're going to go to. So making sure that you have those not sitting actually in your inbox and stored somewhere else that's a lot more safe is very wise. The other thing is please don't save things on your actual desktop. Try to save things in subfolders. And the reason is for many reasons. The main reason would be if your computer crashes, anything that's on your desktop is gone. It has vanished. So for realtors, if you have a current transaction and you've got contracts and addendums and all sorts of things saved on your desktop and your computer crashes, that information is gone. So just make sure that you're using your subfolders, an external hard drive, you're uploading it to the cloud. Anything you can do to keep things from being easily accessible is better. Again, using a two-step authentication process on your emails, on your bank accounts, any kind of online shopping, anything like that. Make sure that you're keeping those very, very secure. So another good example of a data exfiltration is, I'm sure a lot of you get this, where you go into a shopping website and it could be anything like Pottery Barn or Target. And you get a small little pop-up that says, enter your email for a 10% discount on your next order or on this current order. You enter your email. Well, they now have your information on the back end, which means that it's easy for a hacker to grab your email address, which means it's easy for a hacker to now hack your email address, because guess what you're doing when you're going to purchase? You're going to go purchase it and you have to enter what? Your payment information, shipping information, billing information, all that stuff. So it just makes it that much. The more information that you put online, the easier it is for you to be hacked if you're not doing it properly. I'm not saying never shop online. I personally shop online. I do online banking. I do all sorts of stuff online. However, every single site I go on is, 1, it's going to be secure. 2, I'm going to do a 2-step authentication. And 3, I never, ever subscribe to a website, ever. So just making sure that you're doing the steps that you need to ensure that your business and your personal life is completely protected. Okay, again, the whole ransomware. So we're going to go into the victim mitigation here, the 3-2-1 rule. 3 is backups, 2 is different media, and 1 is offsite. So the 3-2-1 rule is just basically, and I'll put it into better words than that, is making sure that you back up as much information as possible. So try not to store things locally. Try not to store things on open forums as well. So again, using that external hard drive, using cloud, anything that's offsite is best, because if somebody were to put ransomware on your system, they now have keys to the castle. Anything on your computer and everything you've ever done on your computer, they have access to. So if you can pull everything off of your actual system, to where if they do put ransomware and they start threatening you, you don't have anything on your computer. So I'm not paying you anything, and you can hack all you want because there's nothing here. They won't be able to find bank information, confirmations of any types of payments, nothing. So all that stuff should be completely off your actual system. Please also utilize the Orange County Realtors IT department. They're fantastic. They're super smart. Plus it's free to you because they want to make sure that you're, you've got everything together. One of the great things that you can do with them is contact them, have them hop on your system and see if your antivirus is up to date. See if you have a good one, have them check that out. Have them check out, what your system's running speed is do you have too much stuff on your computer? What's bogging it down? Did something download without you knowing on the back end? You could have gone on a website at one point and not seen a pop-up that opened up behind a screen that started downloading something. So have them look into all that. It's basically just have them do like a forensic sweep of your system. Might as well take advantage of that. Again, that team is really, really great. They're very smart. They're very nice. And that's something you can easily do. All right. Basic overview of an attack. So again, we went over this, knowing your vulnerabilities, knowing what a phishing email is. And let me show you really quick what that might look like. So this is an email that comes through. And if you look closely right here, you'll see that the email doesn't really quite make sense. So by hovering over this actual email, see, it's coming from the Internal Revenue Services. Now, first of all, the IRS is never going to email you. So keep that in mind. It's never going to happen. But if you get something like this and you hover over it, you just hold your cursor right over it, it's going to pull up this. This is obviously not internal revenue. So now you know that this is definitely fake and it's phishing. And it's asking you to click on this link here to download your tax account. But if you hover over this link, look at all this information that comes up. It's got random people's email address. It's got all sorts of stuff in it that's not an actual link. So that's how you know if an email is phishing or not. It's just by hovering over the from, the sender, and making sure that it's legitimate. So let's take, for example, your escrow company. You get an email, your buyer or your seller gets an email from the escrow company saying, hey, we've updated our wire instructions. We've recently changed banks. Please see the attached wire information for your closing funds or for your, payment dues for HOA. And I've seen all sorts of crazy stuff. Take a look at your from, and they're probably going to have the exact same signature line down here. But if you hover over the from, it'll be a completely different address. So that's something to educate your clients about. Is that in the event they receive any kind of email asking them, requesting any kind of money, for them to just double check who the sender is before they respond or do anything like that. It's just good practice. All right, so identity profile, here's the information that I was telling you about. Anytime you enter any kind of information like this into a website, you're vulnerable. So just make sure that the website you're entering it into is a secure website. Make sure you're not on an open-ended Wi-Fi, that it's a secure Wi-Fi, and make sure that you're not saving information as well. A lot of these websites will say something like, save payment information for future purchases. It'll make things easier later on. Don't save your information. Definitely don't use a ATM debit card either because it's tied into your bank account. And the last thing you want is for people to have access into your bank account. So make sure you close that as well. And use a credit card. If you use a credit card and say your credit card gets hacked, somebody steals your credit card number, you can contact your credit card company. Hopefully you guys have protection on your credit cards. And if you don't, you definitely should call and check and just cancel that credit card. If it's attached to your ATM card, they now have access into your actual personal bank account. And that's a little bit more of a nightmare. Making sure that any sites where this information is being used is a secure site and you're on a secure network. Right, personal protection and employee protection. So multi-factor authentication. This is going to be where on any website, all social media, all bank accounts, all shopping sites, everything like that. If you go into your profiles that you set up and you go into settings, there will be an area in privacy and security that has the multi-factor authentication in it. Turn it on and follow the steps. This is going to be something where you can either scan your fingerprint. It'll be able to scan your eyes. It'll be able to text you a code to your actual cell phone number. It'll send you a message if your account was trying to be logged into a certain area that is unknown. So for example, let's say for the past 3 years, your IP address that's attached to your computer shows Mission Viejo. And all of a sudden, for some reason, it showed Kansas City. You're going to get a text message before they actually allow you to log into that website that says, hey, we got an attempt that was in Kansas City. Was this really you? And you'll be able to reply yes or no. And if you reply yes, then you can move forward and log in because you're on vacation or visiting family. But if you reply no, they're going to take it as a hack attempt and they're going to ask you to change your password. So turning on things like multi-factor authentications is really great because it not only makes it super hard for a hacker to hack your information because they're obviously not going to have your cell phone number or your cell phone on hand. So even if they have your cell phone number, they wouldn't have your actual cell phone to receive any kind of text messages. But it's going to allow for, if something were to happen, you're going to get notified that there was an attempt. So please make sure that you're turning this on. It takes a couple of seconds. It's really easy to do. And then it's telling you something you have, something you are, something you know. So this is kind of, you don't really want to do this because, again, you don't want your passwords to be personal. And I get a lot of agents that tell me all the time, well, then it's going to be really hard for me to remember, and I don't want to have to do a different password for each website. Like, what is your suggestion for that? I suggest having an Excel sheet with all the websites, usernames, and passwords in it. I suggest that you do not store it on your actual computer. I suggest that you put it on an external hard drive. If you save your password and do like a password saver like Google, if you're going into Chrome and doing it that way, it can be fine as long as you're on a secure network. So again, don't be logging into things at a Starbucks, stuff like that. But if you're going to save your passwords, don't log into any of your sites unless you're on a secure network. And make sure that every single password for every single site is different. I know that sounds like a pain, but it's really important to do that, because if you don't and one thing gets logged into and hacked, they're going to try to hack into everything else that's yours, that's on your system, which means more than likely you're using the same password and they're going to get in everything. So make it as hard for them as possible. Have a strategy and a response plan. So mitigation strategies, defenses, and responses. Develop partnership and working groups. So know a good IT person. Utilize Orange County Realtors. Find out who your IT person is for your brokerage and talk to them. Get to know them. Do a diagnostic every 6 months on your system through those IT people. Change your passwords every 90 days. I know that sounds strenuous, but it could save you a lot of money and a lot of heartache. Just know the more information you know and the more secure you keep yourself, the better off you're going to be. Open sharing of attempted hack data and stuff like that. So basically, if you were to get hacked, let's say your email address gets hacked and it's a brokerage email, let your broker know, and then let your colleagues know as well. You just need to let everybody know that you might have recently been emailing as well, because if you've been hacked, the chances are the next attempt that attacker is going to do is on whoever you've been currently emailing. Hire a good IT security staff and keep them updated. So if you own your own business, very important. If you don't, you're working for a broker, make friends with that IT department. Or again, contact Orange County Realtors IT department. They're great. They're going to know what to do. They can help. At the very least, have them check your antivirus on your systems. Have a cyber incident response plan. In the event you get hacked on your business transactions, what are you going to do? What are your steps? What are your recourse steps? How are you going to protect your client? What kind of conversation are you going to need to have? You should have this. You should have some sort of plan. So your first plan should be, if your email gets hacked, immediately change your password. Advise your broker if it's a brokerage email. If it's a Gmail, Yahoo, anything like that, just change your password. Contact your current clients or anyone you've been currently emailing and let them know that your email has currently been hacked and to watch out for suspicious emails. Do that next. And then contact anyone that is involved in a current transaction. So if your email gets hacked midway of a transaction, contact the escrow, the title, the lender, contact anyone that you've been in contact with and is a party to that transaction and advise them. That way they can keep an eye out if they get a suspicious email from you. So communication is key. Make your organization a difficult target. So this goes for not only your real estate business, but for your personal business as well. And this is what we're seeing, apply the essential 8 to mitigation, limit, and recover from an attack. All of this really just has to do with the security steps you have in place. Making sure you have a multifunction authentication on your systems, all your websites, making sure that you don't have things saved on your desktop, that your actual email, once you log into it, is not bombarded with tons of information that really shouldn't be there. That's all hidden in subfolders or is extracted onto an external hard drive, that you have really strong, good passwords on everything. It's not anything personal whatsoever. And that you have multifunction authentication set up on all your social media as well. So if you can get these things started, the sooner the better. Your chances of being hacked are very, very minimal. You're never going to not be at risk. Everyone's always at risk. Even I'm at risk. Everyone's always at risk of being hacked. But if you can limit it to where your chances might be 10%, I'd rather be a 10% chance than a 90% chance of being hacked. So just doing those 5 steps is really, really important. Okay, contact the FBI early. So this is really, really important if you're in a transaction, because the quicker that you contact the FBI, the quicker they can, or have escrow, contact the FBI, the quicker they can start doing their investigation process to attempt to get some, if not all, of your clients' funds back. Really, really important. There was actually an escrow company in San Diego, like the year before COVID, that shut down, was bankrupt because of wire fraud. The funds, the sellers' net proceeds went missing, went overseas. They couldn't recoup it. They had to go, huge lawsuit. It was a whole mess. Because of the lawsuit, the escrow company couldn't cover any of it and unfortunately went under. So making sure that that escrow company in place is strong enough to where they can cover it and still hopefully be in business is good for you, because they're so small that a big hit might hurt them. You have no chances of trying to recoup that money, and the next person they're coming after is you. So know who you're working with. Again, contacting the FBI, if it's an escrow transaction, should come directly from the escrow company. They can give you updates as to what's going on the investigation, so then you can contact your client and let them know as well. They'll open up a case number. You can give that case number to your client as well. Just make sure that you're keeping communications open. If this happens on a personal thing where it's you personally that's being hacked, definitely start a case as soon as possible. Give them all of the information, as much information as you possibly can. Their website where you put in attack information is very easy, very user-friendly, and it's a couple of steps, and they'll do follow-ups and kind of let you know like where they are with that current case. So if your information was to get stolen and somebody's trying to get loans under your name, definitely reach out and put in a ticket into the FBI to have an investigation open. You guys can click on it. It's actually going to walk you through your two-step verification. You're going to need your cell phone with you, and then it'll just go through the motions of what you need to do. So if you have a Gmail account, this is what you want to use. You'll enter your password, and then again, it's going to go through all the steps of your two-step authentication. It's going to ask you for your cell phone number. It's going to send you a code. Once you get that code, you'll enter it, and then it's going to ask you if you want to set up two-step authentication for every time you log in. You definitely want to do that. So anytime that you have I can't think of the words, I'm so sorry. You're logging into your email addresses from an outside area that's on an open Wi-Fi. Anytime that you might be on vacation and it's not reading the IP of your system, you're checking your email address, it's going to ask you to put in the code that is being texted to your phone, and that code is going to change every single time. So the way the algorithms work for a hacker is that it's like a robot. It's not just a person sitting behind their computer and they're just typing in your website and typing in your email address and just waiting for you to log on, and then they're logging on. It's basically a computerized robot. It's a whole bunch of coding that just tries to pull keywords, key phrases, wire, money, driver's license, birth dates, like all these key phrases. And as soon as it's able to find one, then it tries to infiltrate wherever it's finding it from. So then it tries to look at, okay, well, is it pulling this from a Gmail account? Is it pulling it from a Yahoo account? Is it pulling it from a website? And it tries to infiltrate that way. And as soon as it gets into something, your hacker's now notified that they've got in, and then they can start infiltrating and getting into whatever they want to get into. So it's not just somebody that's constantly just sitting there and trying to get into your system. So this is why the two-step authentication is important, because a computer can't physically type anything into a system. It can read it, an algorithm can read it, but it can't physically type in a code. So setting that up is going to help you. Good antivirus for your laptop. So there's a couple. I'll pull up a link for you right now. There's going to be some that are free, and there's going to be some that you need to pay for. I usually tell agents you should definitely try and pay for them. If you pay for them, they're going to be better. But here is a list of the top free ones. So you can take a look at any of these and set up a free one, and they're pretty decent. Otherwise, I would just use, the ones everybody really knows about, which is the Norton antivirus is a good one. If your system is an Apple system, they already have a built-in antivirus, so you don't have to worry about it at all. It's already there. But again, this is where I suggest you talk to the IT department, even for Orange County Realtors or for the ones having to do with your work, or if you have your own IT person, and have them do a diagnostic of your system. So say you have an iMac, but it's a little bit older, have them check out your antivirus on your system, make sure it's up to date. And if it's not, they can help you, give you the steps on how to update that and make sure that it's up to date and it's the strongest version possible. Okay. So AAA fraud protection insurance, you're good. Honestly, to be honest, yes, McAfee is good. I'll just answer that one really quick. McAfee's a good one as well. For the AAA fraud protection insurance, that's a good one for you to have on a personal level. But when it comes to your actual business, it's probably not going to cover your business. It is very, very hard for a realtor to find insurance that's going to cover fraud that happens on an actual transaction. This is why you want to make sure that your title and or escrow company have that, because they can actually get it. So if something does happen, they're the ones that are going to be able to cover that loss. It really won't be from you. It's not something that's, unfortunately, it's just not offered in our business unless it's an escrow company or a title company. So hopefully that answers that question. How do I transfer all my emails to a drive external? So your external hard drive is going to come with a cord. It's like a little box cord. You're going to take your cord and you're going to attach it to your computer. And then it's going to open up a window, like a little folder, and you're just going to drag and drop. It's that easy. You can open up all your emails from Google, everything like that. You should be able to just drag and drop, or you can select all and export them and then import them directly onto your folder. So it would be as if you had a flash drive. It's the same concept. Your flash drive would open up a small window and you just drag and drop right into it. Okay, let's see. Do you have any encrypt email services that you can recommend? For you guys, Zix. Let me pull that website up for you. Or Barracuda. Barracuda is a good one as well. So I'll put both of those in there. You can take a look at them and look at pricing. This is good if you are somebody that actually utilizes or sends a lot of personal information. Get an encryption, something that you can use for encrypting your email address. If you don't send things encrypted, like any type of personal information like that, don't worry about it. If you're more concerned because of your transactions, just make sure your escrow and your title company have a secure form of email. They should be the ones that are doing everything secure and sending that information, and not you. You really should try and pull yourself out of anything having to do with transmittal of important information or money. So hopefully that answers that question for you. Google Drive and Google Docs are secure. Yes, just make sure that you have your two-step authentication set up for those. Because again, if they can hack your email, they can obviously hack your Google Docs and your Google Drive because they're all connected, right? So if you have a multi-function authentication on your Gmail, that's going to also cover your Drive and your Google Docs. So just making sure that you have that, then that makes sure that that entire piece is covered. The same thing goes with Apple. If you just make sure that your two-step authentication is with Apple, then your cloud is going to be protected. Okay, let's see. Open one. Any recommendations on web browsers? I personally like Chrome, and the reason I like Chrome is because Chrome has something called extensions. And in that extensions, you have an option where you can do a pop-up blocker. This blocks any and all pop-ups whenever you're doing anything online, which is great because usually pop-ups are full of malware. So that's why I really like it. It's also pretty secure. I really do not recommend Internet Explorer. I know that's a big default, but I just don't recommend that one. You can just easily get hacked on that thing, and it crashes pretty frequently. Your Safari and I think it's Firefox is the other one for Apple. Those are fine because they're within. Apple just does a pretty good job on their protection. I'm personally not an Apple person. I'm a Windows person. So I utilize Chrome. Microsoft Edge is basically the same thing as Internet Explorer, so it's not really one of my top choices. It's not terrible, but it's not one of my top choices. But again, my main reason for using Chrome You're welcome. My main reason for using Chrome is that whole extensions thing. I love not having pop-ups, number one, and number two, if it's going to keep me secure from getting any type of weird, pop-ups that are going to open up malware on my back end, I'm all for that. Mozilla and Firefox, those are basically one and the same, and those are Apple, and those should be okay. Should I be worried if I get notified by Google that someone is trying to log into your email? No, that's actually a good thing. That means you just need to change your password. Basically what happens is you have some form of protection set up on your Google where they're notifying you that somebody's attempting to log into your information. You see that, you go into your Google, your Gmail, you log in, you automatically need to change your password. And also set up your multi-function authentication. But that's a good thing. That just means that you're already, a step forward on protection, and you want to know if somebody's attempting to log into your information, because if you don't know, then you don't know if you're well protected, right? So if you're not getting notifications that somebody's either trying to use your credit card or log into your websites, then you have no way of knowing if you need to update anything. So for you, I would definitely suggest that you change your password immediately and make sure that you turn on the multi-function authentication. Hopefully that answers that. Any more questions or suggestions, or if you have, even on a personal level, so if you want to ask me about personal tech stuff, please feel free to go ahead and do so. Okay, so you've been asked to accept cookies when you open a website. Should I accept or not? Cookies are fine. Really, all they are, it's just powers up the website itself. Now, if you're on a website that is not a secure website and it's asking you to accept cookies, I would suggest getting off that website completely, because that can actually open up malware. So just make sure that the website you're on that's asking you for that is trusted. But again, the only thing cookies really are, it just helps power the website so that it works quicker. And it has to do with the images that they have. So it's not so much the information that's on their site, it's more of the types of stock photography that they're using on their website. Hopefully that answers that. Apple and Samsung Pay are safe, same as PayPal, same as Venmo. However, please make sure, you're welcome, please make sure that you are changing your password every 90 days on those, and it's a crazy password, and all of those do have an option for you to utilize a multi-function authentication as well. So just go into your privacy settings on those profiles, security and privacy, and just make sure you literally have every one of those options set, and then you should be good. As long as you have the most protection around these things are only safe if you make them safe. They're not safe if you don't utilize all of the privacy settings. Hopefully that makes sense, because I know a lot of people are really weary about the online payments of things, but they're actually great if you're using them properly. Transfer your pictures to your hard drives? I personally would, just because I'm a little weird about pictures in general and just having them like out in the open. And again, if your computer crashes, those pictures are gone. And I don't know about you, but to me, pictures are everything. Those are my memories, and I don't want them gone. So if they're locally stored on your hard drive and they're not anywhere on a cloud, I would highly suggest moving those to a hard drive, just for the sake of you actually having them in the future. Amazon Pay options featured at different retailers outside of Amazon. You just have to know who you're actually paying. If it's a retailer that is a safe Amazon retailer, and you can easily find that just by Googling, like, hey, is Joan and Jay baby goods in Amazon retailer? There's easy ways for you to find that out. I would just first verify that they actually are an Amazon, safe retailer that utilizes that payment. And then also just make sure the site that you're on, is it a secure, safe site? Are they a legitimate company? And then you can move forward with whether or not you're going to choose that payment option. I am going to put the link, if you are all using Google Chrome, I'm going to put the link in the chat room right now for your ad blocker, if you want to take a look at that. But basically what that's going to be is it's going to block any types of pop-up ads, or just ads in general that you might see on side panels of any websites that you're on. You won't get them anymore if you enable that extension on your Google Chrome. So the difference between HTTP versus HTTPS, that S stands for secure. The S means that site is secure. If that S is not there, it's not a secure site. that helps with that one. And that's a good question, because you want to know that you're on a secure site. There'll also be times too where you'll see a tiny little like lock right before the actual URL of the website. Sometimes it'll show that it's unlocked. The other nice thing about Chrome too is if you're using Chrome and you go to an unsecure website, most of the time before it actually puts you into that website, it'll tell you you're about to visit an unsecure website. Are you sure you want to do that? So that's another bonus to having Chrome. Lots of websites right now are using cookies. It's really okay for you to accept cookies. It just kind of helps the website function a little bit better and allow you to see the different types of photos that they have downloaded as, stock photography and things like that on their website. It helps those come up without slowing down the site for you. So it's more of a user experience than it is like a downloading thing. It's totally safe. Just make sure that the website you're accepting this on is a secure website. That's just my suggestion. If it's an unsecure site, it could lead you to malware. So don't just accept it anywhere. But if it's a site that's, you see that it's a secure site, it's got the HTTPS, or it's got the little lockbox next to it in the URL bar, then it's safe for you to accept the cookies. Going into a bank site through Chrome is safe. It is. I just want you guys to all make sure that you have a two-step authentication process on your bank websites. Going through a bank website on any URL is fine, just as long as you're on a secure in a secure network. So please don't log in while you're at Starbucks. And two, making sure that your password is really, really difficult. It's a very strong password. And lastly, making sure that you have a two-step authentication on your bank's credentials. So whether it's going to scan your eyeballs, do a fingerprint, send you a text code that you now have to enter in order to actually get into your bank account, whatever that extra step is before seeing your actual account information, you need to make sure you have that set up, regardless of what web browser you're using. How big of a hard drive should you buy? So that really depends on how much information you have stored on your computer. And unless I'm on your computer, I can't really tell you that, but that would be a really good question for IT or even for the OC realtors, and just kind of tell them like, hey, I need to put all my documents, all my pictures, all the stuff that's on my system onto a hard drive. What size should I buy? To be honest, you don't need anything crazy, because unless you're a gamer and you've got tons of information, or unless you're doing graphic design and you have these really large files, you don't really need too much. And like I said, most of the ones that are out there right now, you can get between $40 and $60. So if you find one that's within that price range, it's more than likely enough space for you. Just make sure that the stuff you're saving is actually, you want to consider it a decluttering situation. Make sure it's actually stuff you want to save versus just saving a bunch of stuff that you really don't need. And I do these classes, periodically with Orange County Realtors, and the information on it changes because the information and the environment changes as well. So hopefully I'll see you guys on another one in the future where we can give you some updated information and, some more tips and whatnot. But thank you for putting that. That's the link for the OC Tech Helpline. And like I said, they're amazing. They're super great, and they can do a quick diagnostic on your system. And that's my very first thing that I would do is I would have them check and see if your antivirus is there, and two, if it's up to date, and if it's not, what your next step should be. And they can help you with that. Getting an external hard drive is pretty smart if you have a ton of stuff on your computer. And then lastly, making sure that you are setting up strong passwords, different ones on all of your websites, as well as your multi-function authentication or two-step authentication process on all your sites is pretty important as well. So there's also something called Password Manager. Google has one, and it's done through Chrome. And basically what it does is you can log into sites, and it'll save your passwords for you, and it'll actually help you create a password. And then it'll also send you a notification if that website might have had an attempted hack, and if they suggest that you should change your password. So it's kind of a neat thing to have if you're using Chrome. I'm going to go ahead and put this link in the chat for you as well. You can just go to it, and basically, like I said, if you go onto a site, you enable it and you go onto a site, basically it'll you'll go to log in and it'll tell you, hey, can we suggest a password for you? And they usually suggest a pretty good one for you. And then they'll save it if you'd like, but they save it in the password manager versus anywhere. But that's kind of a neat thing to have as well. And it's completely safe for you to do that. But again, you still have to have a two-step authentication on everything, just to make sure that you have that extra layer of protection. So I'll leave you with two things, unless we have any more questions, and you guys can obviously post them or, interrupt me. But one, let's talk about your personal stuff. Make sure that you're updated all your passwords, and they're strong passwords. They don't make any sense. They've got different characters, numbers, uppercase, lowercase, at minimum 9. Make sure that you have a different one on every single one of your websites. Set up the two-step authentication on everything, especially social media, banking, emails. Those are 3 major ones. Make sure you're setting up a two-step authentication on those. And lastly, if you're going to save login information, save it externally, not directly on your computers. Business-wise, do the exact same thing. In regards to antiviruses, ESET is not bad. It's fine. I mean, I say that just because I know that there's better options than it, but it's surprisingly how much it's used with realtors. But again, if you're not utilizing Chrome and you're using a different type of browser, that's not a bad one to use. So you still should definitely make sure that you have a two-step authentication process regardless. So spam filters are done through your settings, and it's different for every single email. So which one are you using? And I'll help you with that. Are you using Gmail? Are you using Yahoo? And just so you know, a lot of the spam stuff that you're getting is because you're signing up to stuff. So if you start unsubscribing yourself from things, you'll start seeing less and less spam. So heads up on that. So that one's for Gmail. And then I'll do Outlook next. But again, definitely try and make your life easier by unsubscribing to things. The less sites you're subscribing to, the less spam you'll get. So those 2 links are for spam filters for Gmail and spam filters for Outlook. And this is for AOL. And for AOL users, you're just going to need to go down to where it says manage unwanted emails and just follow those steps. So again, one of the things I'm going to stress again is do not get yourself involved in the wiring process of any of your closing transactions. Make sure that it is from client to escrow, escrow to client direct. The less you put yourself in any type of wiring knowledge on a transaction, the less liable you'll be held if something were to happen. And just make sure that that escrow company has the right steps and process of how they're sending those wire information to your clients, or how they're obtaining wire information from your client, and how they're verifying if that's correct before they release funds. So questions, like interrogate the closing companies. Make sure that you're doing your part in making sure you and your client are completely protected. I know that was like information overload, but your takeaways should definitely be the passwords, the two-step authentication, and removing yourself from wire information on transactions. How much memory does a $60 hard drive hold normally? More than you'll probably need. To be honest, that's what I have. And I have plenty of room on it. So it's probably going to hold, let's take a look. They're probably going to hold somewhere around 1 to 2 terabytes. That's an extensive amount of space. I can probably guarantee you're not going to have that much on your system. It's a lot of space. So if you do get something that's, in the 1 terabyte, that's plenty of space for you. You should be able to get all your pictures, all your documents, everything onto that, and still have some more space. It's going to be a lot more than having just a flash drive. So hopefully that answers your question. So for those of you that don't know 1 TB is 1 terabyte. You probably don't need anything more than that. Would it be okay to do crazy passwords, two-step authentication for every 30 days? That might be a little much. 90 days is good. Doing a 90-day cycle on it is pretty good, especially if you have a pretty solid and strong password and you're doing the multi-step authentication. But the multi-step authentication, once you set that up, you don't have to reset it up. But if you're going to change your password, you probably want to get into the habit of changing it, especially on things that you're using more and more frequently, probably every 90 days. So I would suggest doing that on, mortgage, personal banking, social media platforms, emails. I would definitely suggest that those would be in the 90-day cycle. Every 30 days, if you really want to, you can, but it's not necessary. So hopefully that answers that question for you. But getting back to the hard drives, 1 terabyte is plenty. And you can get them on Amazon for, between $40, $50, max $60. Honestly, any of them are going to be good. The difference in pricing on most of them is gonna make more sense to somebody that's doing things that are more intrusive, like graphic design and things like that. So not really necessary for you to have anything that's super hardcore. See, would it be okay to use same crazy passwords for all the social media sites and change it every 90 days? You can. I don't suggest it. The reason, if you're going to use a password manager, it won't matter if they're all different because it's going to automatically log you into these sites and still have your two-step authentication process to keep you secure. So if you're going to do that, you're fine. If you're wanting to do the exact same crazy password for the sake of you just don't want to have to remember more than one password or write down more than one password, the thing is if one gets hacked, the first thing they're going to do to try and get into everything else is utilize that exact same password. And don't forget too that if you have Facebook and Instagram, they're basically one and the same. So they're already linked together. So even though your logins might be different, if you're keeping the same password, if they're going to hack one, they're going to end up hacking both. So I just always suggest just having different passwords across the board. So this link is to a portable external hard drive. It holds 1 terabyte. It's pretty decent. And it's about it's almost $50. But again, it's one of those things where you buy once and that's it. You'll never have to buy another one. Stores like 1 terabyte is plenty. I do graphic design as well, and that's what I use. So you'll definitely be good with just 1 terabyte. Just make sure that you're not just dumping a bunch of stuff in there, and strategically put information that you actually need in there. Also, if you have, Gmail or Apple or anything like that, utilize your cloud for archiving any emails. So, let's say you have every single email you've ever had since you started in real estate, and for some reason you just really don't want to delete anything just in case, try archiving stuff like that into your clouds. I'm going to put my information in the chat for you guys as well. So let's say, for example, you get a weird email on Tuesday, you're not 100% positive, and you just want somebody to look at it really quick for you, please, by all means, reach out to me. Or utilize the hotline for the Orange County Realtors tech line. They're great as well. So I'll leave my email address here for you all. Hopefully I was able to, scare you, but also educate you. I always want to make sure that our industry is well taken care of on any part of our industry, because being number 5 is too high. We should not be number 5 for being targeted. And we're also in Orange County where there's a lot of money, so we're definitely very much targeted. Our office location for my escrow company, we actually have 12 office locations. We span over 5 major counties. So we have multiple in Orange County, we have 2 in LA, and a couple in the Inland Empire. But yeah, we're in Irvine North and South, Huntington Beach, Mission Viejo, Corona, Brea, Anaheim, Rancho Cucamonga, Northridge, Valencia, Monrovia. So, everywhere. one of the largest independents, so we're everywhere. We are comparable to other escrow companies, yes. Yeah. And we do not charge extra because of the fact that we have an SSAE certification and cyber fraud insurance. We do not add that into our pricing or anything like that. That is just something that you have. We're located on Main Street in Huntington Beach, and we do make every single one of our employees train with the FBI annually. We're pretty aggressive about that, actually. It's been an absolute pleasure teaching you guys about cyber theft and wire fraud. I really hope you had some really good takeaways from this. Please keep my information on hand if you have any questions in regards to cyber fraud, wire theft, whether it has to do professionally or personally. I'm happy to help. And thank you for asking escrow questions as well. I'm, of course, happy to help you there also if you need anything. And hopefully you'll be able to join us on our next classes that we'll be doing with Orange County Realtors. They've been fantastic about allowing me the platform to share this information with you. And hopefully the more and more we can teach each other and educate each other on the steps that we can take, we can strengthen our industry as a whole. So with that, I'm going to sign off unless there's any other questions. But thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day to do my lengthy 2-hour class. I really appreciate it. I hope to see you guys all again, maybe at some point at an actual class, but if not, virtually, to update you on what's going on in the cyber world as far as real estate goes. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you all so very much. Bye.